I think there's an attempted co-option by the state that's already currently going on, and they're going to attempt to ghettoize us as a store of value, because if they can strip away our censorship resistance properties, our medium of exchange properties, and they own currency, okay, we get completely excluded from that conversation. And the way they do that,
when society's turned on its ear and Bitcoin is the new form of money and Bitcoiners are the richest people in the world.
People say, are you predicting a war? Is this theory all doomerism? And the answer is no. We just need a catalyst sufficiently large enough to charge up the masses to make massive shift.
I really do think that there will be very much pre-Christ, post-Christ. I really do think it will be before Bitcoin and after Bitcoin. I think it's that big a revolution.
this is why we got to get our buddy Dave here to get some Bitcoin.
You know what I'm going to do, Dave? You know what I'm going to do? I am going to gift you some Bitcoin so that you have skin in the game.
So you guys are going, why would you wait? And there's several things that I'm waiting for, and Cedric knows what these are. And one is that...
What if that's the goal, the controlled demolition of the American economy, and they let us all just suffer until we beg for CBDC print, crush the economy, crush morale, all of it?
The best way to get prepared is to understand what Bitcoin really is and to own a lot of it.
What is real? How do you define real?
You can't jump into cash. Cash is trash. What do? You get out.
Joining me today is an all-star lineup of returning guests to discuss the fourth turning. Brandon Quittem, the godfather of the Bitcoin fourth turning spiel, Larry Lepard, David Collum, and American HODL. Welcome back to the Bitcoin Matrix, gentlemen. Let's get into it. I think to kind of just really save time, all of you guys need no introduction. And I'm going to throw it to Brandon to kind of give us a little background on what is the fourth turning.
Yeah, my pleasure. So just quick personal anecdote. It's summer 2020, COVID in full force. The world's going crazy. I'm cooped up in the city wondering why my neighbors are calling the cops on my other neighbors for too many cars in the driveway, why I can't trust personal friends to not rat me out, why I thought we were Americans who stood up for what's right. Instead, we're all just blowing in the wind. So I kind of went into a crazy mode, started reading books in an attempt to try to make sense of the world. Maybe we can or maybe we can't actually make sense of the world, but I wanted to try. Stumbled on the Fourth Turning book, written in the 90s by two demographers and historians, Neil Howe and Bill Strauss, same year as A Sovereign Individual, which is required reading as far as I'm concerned. These two books come out, both equally tell the future, pretty wild to see, and they break down essentially an 80 to 90 year cycle based on demography, based on generational cycles. So by studying American history, they observed patterns that emerged out of history. They didn't go looking for the patterns, they stumbled into them. And what they found is that they defined a generational cycle, which they give in repeating order 4 different archetypes, hero, nomad, artist, etc. Those 4 archetypes repeat every 20, 25 years. And each archetype, depending on the stage of life they're in, are they a young person, are they middle age, are they later age? Depending on the stage of life, that constellation of the archetypes creates a mood, and that mood is relatively easy to predict how society will respond to their environment. So if there's a catalyst in the environment, is our mood like we're just finished fighting a war and we're all chilling after World War II, in which case we don't want to do anything crazy, no changes, we want white picket fence, leave it to beaver, just relax. Or is it a period where our institutions are crumbling? We look around and we say, hey, the exterior world is falling apart, like right now, in which case humanity has this mood of, we're going off the rails, we need to make extreme sacrifice, we need to collectivize now in an attempt to try and solve this greater problem. And we can go into all these different things, but that's probably the shortest way I can possibly give the thesis. I think everyone here is familiar with it, and most of your listeners have heard us blab about this. So let's start with that.
Yeah, Dave, are you familiar with the theory? And maybe what is your kind of take on what Brandon said there, and like how well do you understand the theory, and maybe your reaction?
Well, I read it quite a few years ago, so it's a little, but I've been reading a lot of Jim Quinn, and he's been talking about it for years, and so I get updates all the time. What's interesting about it is it's as they emphasize, bad things happen in every one of these quarters, I would call it. Maybe what's the name for it? I can't even remember what the names are called, but these
Turnings.
turnings, yeah. But it's the fourth turning when society goes batshit. And so it's not so much what happened. So this idea of looking for a trigger is less important. It's really about just society starting to react to bad things in a very bad way. The other thing, they wrote it in 96 and said the next one ought to come around 2010. And we're sitting there going, oh, that was a pretty good call, wasn't it? So a lot of debate about when did it start, which it's not what was the trigger, but just what's the starting point. And, you know, the financial crisis, you could argue, was it. I would actually be a little more precise and say maybe it started when the response to the financial crisis was poor. And then society said, okay, that's not fair that the bankers got all the money. And then they started really getting pissed off.
Yeah, I think that's right. Neil defines it as 0809 GFC as the line, but these are social phenomenons. These are not black
They're
and white
vague.
lines
They're
in a
they're
sense.
blurry. Yeah.
That's right. And the analog is the previous fourth turning he defines as 1929 to 1945. So obviously we have the stock market collapse, we have the Great Depression, then we have FDR take power. And a key part of fourth turnings is that on the institutional level, we start to do things that maybe 10 years prior would be totally unthinkable. So what does FDR do? He's deficit spending. He creates FDIC. Hey, don't worry, the banks are going to be fine. He creates social security, NATO, World Bank, IMF, ultimately Bretton Woods, obviously World War II.
He
All
grabs
of
the
that.
gold
Yeah, exactly.
and
1933.
devalues the gold. Yeah.
That's right. All that happens and it's totally unthinkable. Another parallel for this group is that historically in fourth turnings, we leave hard money and we go to soft money. And so there's kind of this little shift where in chaos mode, we want soft money so we can spend that money to solve problems. Um,
So working backwards even, so there's one they missed actually. So working backwards, they kind of don't emphasize this so much, but the Civil War one would argue was the previous 80-year fourth turning. The one they missed, I think, unless I missed it, what happened in 1690? We burned witches. So society was this very small thing. So it's not going to be as huge as World War II. But we started doing batshit crazy stuff. We got very superstitious. And so I would argue that fourth turning was missed by Strauss and Howe.
yeah, I think that's right. I don't think he goes back that far.
Oh no,
But
they
it's
do.
an
They
interesting
go
one.
back. No, they go back all the way to the Glorious Revolution, and I mean they track it back into the 1200, 1300, 1400s. I don't have them at the tip of my fingers, but they've done it in Europe, and you can kind of correlate. I don't know if they talked about the witches, but obviously the American Revolution was the one prior to the Civil War. The thing that's interesting about the Civil War is it was kind of short. I mean, unless you consider that maybe it started with the caning of that senator in like 1845, but you know the war broke out in 1860. It was over in 1865. But I'm assuming that because afterwards they didn't they had sharecroppers and everything else. I mean there's a lot of turmoil for all maybe 20 or 30 years around the Civil War, right?
Yeah, you could argue the carpetbaggers were the extension of the fourth turning.
Exactly. I think I agree with the thesis. I mean, to me, it was very clear that the beginning was 2008, and whether it was the crisis itself or the reaction to the crisis, fuzzy lines, but that was clearly it. And these things tend to last 20 to 30 years, which would imply that 2028 we would have resolution, or at the worst, longest case, maybe 2038 we'd have resolution, and that kind of fits with my sense of when fiat currency fails. I tend to think if I had to model it out, I would say what I think is going to happen here is Trump's going to do his best to make things right. He can't undo 50 years of bad shit. The markets are all going to go down, inflation's going to go up, and we're going to have the worst of both worlds. We're going to have an inflationary depression or inflationary downturn. And so in 4 years, what will happen is Team Blue will come along and they'll promise free money and stimmies and all the other good stuff, and Trump, the red team will lose. And then those guys are going to put Stephanie Kelton in as the Treasury Secretary, and they're going to run huge deficits, print tons of money, and we become South America / Israel / whatever, at a worst outcome, Weimar, and the currency outright fails sometime between 28 and 2032 in the next Democratic administration. unless we do a reset. I mean, the only optimistic outcome I can see here is that Bessent gets it, and Bessent and Trump are courageous enough to try and do a reset in this 4-year period.
Here's a question. I think everybody's like kind of agreed on the timeline, kind of agreed on the theory. I haven't read the book, but I agree with the theory that there are historical blind spots where basically nobody alive has seen these kind of circumstances, and so we fall into all the same pitfalls that we've fallen into before. That makes total sense, right? If you look at like the timeline that Brandon outlined, we're coming up on the peak, and in this theory, and like, the peak was the Civil War, the peak was World War II beforehand. What is the peak this time? Is it economic collapse, or is it something that looks more like the fall of the American Republic and giving way to an American Caesar, and we get a dictator, right? Like, it could, to me, it's very unclear what the climax of this could be.
Well, the outcome, yeah, I agree with you, HODL. I think the outcome is very unclear, but I think the key driving issue has got to be the monetary system. I mean, we've reached, it's Lynn's "nothing stops this train." We've reached the end of the print and inflate road, and we're now behaving like a third world country, and play third world games, get third world results. Your currency inflates massively.
What if that's the goal, the controlled demolition of the American economy and the American sort of standard of living? So
That's my theory.
maybe there is no print, maybe it's the big drain, and they let us all just suffer until we beg for the CBDC print. But maybe there's no print for a long time to make us just crush the economy, crush morale, all of it.
I think that's possible, but when I look at the Fed and I look at, the choices they have, remember, the people in the government, their number one job is just to keep the system going, keep getting reelected, and take advantage of their privilege to make themselves wealthy. And what you're kind of describing, Cedric, is a massive depression, just massive, and kind of fighting in the streets sort of stuff, which I suppose is possible. But I think at the end of the day that the average politician faced with that potential outcome versus printing the money to keep things going, they'll print every time. That's my belief. Now, that doesn't mean that they will. And the system, the system is not one set of people. I know there are those who believe that, the WEF is kind of controlling all of this, and maybe they are, but I don't really think so. I think everybody just kind of acts in their own best interest, and the people who are in positions of power are going to do what they've done in the past, which is run the printer and run it hard.
With the occasional bombing of a country that turns out to work out very poorly.
Oh yeah, no, with a lot of other collateral bullshit, Dave, that you're very much aware of. I agree with that for sure.
So I think emergent. I think the system goes emergent, which HODL's point is I don't think it's predictable. There's a Heisenberg uncertainty component to this, right? So once it goes emergent, then it's like saying, what's that crowd going to do now that they've lit the torches? You go, well, we'll find out.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The potential is a strongman arises, and in the earlier part of another fourth turning, that's what led to Hitler rising to power, right?
Right. It kind of feels like all these different scenarios are on the table, right?
He was going to make Germany great again, and the Jews were the ones who had screwed everybody by printing all the money in Weimar, and so therefore we got to kill the Jews. And
there's another theory I was wondering about, just this. I'm a tangential thinker, I'm told, which means that I need an ADHD drug. I was wondering if Hitler had a tactical reason for the Holocaust. Not to say he's not a sick fuck, right? I'm in no way endorsing it, but did he have a tactical reason? I don't think it was to unify Germany, because it was kind of on the side that he did it. And I was wondering if you look at the story, the mega bankers fund every war. They funded the Russian Revolution. They funded the Soviet Union. Could it be that Hitler, who I do believe viewed the Soviets as his biggest risk, period, bar none? Is it possible his goal was to destroy the financial power base of the Soviets by destroying the Jewish financial base?
It's an interesting thought. It's possible.
Well, then I ran into a quote by Putin, who said, "I look forward to future generations not being under the shackles of the Rothschilds." And I go, that's such a weird quote. And then it got fact checked. And who'd they ask? the Rothschilds. So it's just a
Are you
weird
pretty sure he
world.
said that, Dave, or is that one of the?
No, that's why I went looking for an origin of it, and I couldn't find the origin except the Rothschild saying that's not true.
I think going back to what is the peak in front of us, I think historically it's either a hot war abroad or some civil war internally in the US, or the Revolutionary War was kind of a hybrid between a hot war abroad and a civil war here, right? Most of the fighting was loyalists versus patriots, 5% or less was redcoat problems. And so I think we should look at the variables in front of us and make our best guess. But for sure, it's emergent. There's no confidence here. This doesn't predict anything. It just predicts that we're actually ready to go all in a total war, right? If you look at pre-World War One, I'm going to get my history slightly wrong, but the Germans sank our boat, the Lusitania or something like that, and we don't even care about it. Nothing happens. Then you go to Pearl Harbor. The next day, America is up in arms, ready to go to war immediately. Lusitania was the third turning. We're not quite ready to go all in. Pearl Harbor, fourth turning. We're instantly activated. And so I think right now the situation is, where is the little tinder fire ready to be sparked? And I'm concerned in the US, to be honest. Let's see if MAGA, Maha can unify us. But right now, we're as divided as we've ever been since we've been tracking data. I saw a stat that showed 5% of marriages right now are between left and right. That's insane. 40% of Americans believe that violence is justified against your political enemies. 40% think secession's a good idea. And that's probably coming from left and right. So we're divided. We're scary here. And yes, I think that the monetary system, which seems to erupt every fourth turning, I don't know if that is the peak, but that puts pressure on all systems, right? We have 50 years of outsourcing manufacturing, gutter middle class that creates tension here. And we have rising China, tensions abroad. And so I think all the monetary system obviously comes into play, but I think the social side needs to be considered strongly too.
Yeah, I've thought about this quite a bit, and I think it's sort of like I've coined it the race to Hitler, which is I think the left and the right both want their own Hitler, and they think the other side is going to do a Hitler. So you got to do a Hitler before your opponent does a Hitler so that they can't Hitler you, right? And it's like you can see it on the right. You have figures like Curtis Yarvin who are talking about America needs a CEO, and we could have this. We got to get over the word dictator, and we could have this dictator who could be a good thing for the country. And it could be like a Julius Caesar, and the Roman Republic shifts to the Roman Empire, and then we go back and forth. And then on the left, you can obviously see that they want to run it Manchurian candidate, technocrat oligarchy style, where they have a Joe Biden puppet in there, and then who knows who's actually running the show or how things actually get done. And in politics, like we're learning or we're realizing that like a lot of our politics are based on sort of decorum and good vibes. And when you start playing it to the bone, you start breaking a lot of things. And I think that's one of the things one of the trends that we're seeing. And there's only so far you can stretch out that rubber band before it snaps entirely. And I don't, again, to Dave's point, it's emergent. I don't know what the result is there, but whatever's coming is not great.
No, and the one hope though is that it doesn't go kinetic, because we would lose a war against China. I mean, they couldn't invade our country because we're too heavily armed individually. But from a weapons and munitions point of view, as Groman has pointed out, 70 or 80% of our defense stuff we need Chinese components. I mean, one of the really interesting things that's going to happen here is we're going to run our defense industry is going to run out of rare earths because China has cut off shipping rare earths to us. And
So it turns out I had dinner with the CEO of Chemitol, and the mayor of the city of, I think it's Gosselin or Gosen or whatever. And I asked him about the rare earths. He said the rare earths are not rare. It's just that China has cut the prices so low that they basically made them unique suppliers. Now, the problem is that we all know that if all of a sudden China cuts us off, you say, how long would it take to open up a rare earth mine? And the answer is decades.
right, that's the problem.
And so it doesn't matter if we have them, we ain't going to get them. If China cut us off today, we'd actually be starving.
Well, we are. I mean, rare earths, they did cut us off. I mean, they said that, and so that's a fact, and that's.
But I mean, all our cars would stop working, and we wouldn't be able to repair them, and I mean.
We'll see. I mean, so the thing that's different about this fourth turning versus other ones is that in this one we actually have the ability to destroy the entire planet and the human race, which is a scary thought, but it's actually somewhat of a comforting thought in the sense that now, well, no, think about it. Now having that, now, no, Dave, I'm serious.
I
Now
know.
having that ability, it actually limits what all-out war can look like. Do you know what I mean? I mean, if
Well, hopefully.
Well, if you run the game theory on China and America going to war, two superpowers with the largest nuclear arsenals on Earth, you come to the conclusion actually that the safest place to be is in mainland China or in mainland America, and that probably it'll be a naval conflict between the two superpowers in the South China Sea, right? So like that's the case for mutually assured destruction.
Did anyone read Annie Jacobson's Nuclear War?
not yet.
So she starts out, and if I wasn't going to read it, but then too many guys like Jeff Sachs says it's brilliant, so I had to go read it. She starts out with the first flash. She talks to all these military guys, digs as deep as she can. Starts out with the first flash coming out of North Korea, and she said within 1 second, it's been identified as an ICBM that's been launched. And she goes second by second and minute by minute what happens, who gets called where, who's on what plane, where are they going. And her conclusion is, to be overly precise, she says 78 minutes later, the world has been destroyed.
Back to warfare, though. I see the emergence of warfare, whatever we're calling the new warfare, drone swarms, directed energy weapons to take down drone swarms, cyber attacks, economic warfare, psyops, etc. So I think what we're going to, biological, I expect something more like a Cold War 2.0 with China, where both sides maintain plausible deniability, and it's more regional skirmishes and trying to manage perceptions around it. Like try to keep economics intact while also maneuvering, under the radar against your enemy. I think that's already happening now.
Yeah, how much of COVID was a new form of non-kinetic, not warfare, but sort of a way to create the sense of warfare-like conditions for society so that they can financially paper over things?
Exactly right. And I think that's a key point, just tying back to the theory. People say, are you predicting a war? Is this theory all doomerism? And the answer is no. We just need a catalyst sufficiently large enough to charge up the masses to make massive shift. It just so happens that historically it's been war. But could it be this like subversive type warfare? And is that enough to mobilize the troops? Maybe. But I'm personally not worried about US-China nuclear war. I think both parties will be sophisticated enough to get through it. And I also don't know how much Chinese supply chains matter except for on drone components, because we don't need.
Yeah, the drone shit scares the hell out of me. They've got these little drones that can home in on hot people. I mean, we couldn't fight a drone army, and they've got more drone technology than we do. That whole thing's scary, but I don't think they're evil, and I don't think they want to take over the United States. I think Jordy Visser did a really great job. He had a podcast where he said something along, China and America are getting a divorce, and global trade are the kids. and it was a really great metaphor and a great line, because we really need them because they sell us cheap shit, and we're not going to sit here and put together iPhones. I mean, did you see any of those Chinese AI videos of all the the fat slobs trying to put together iPhones? It was awful, evil stuff. And in turn, they've got a population, they've got a communist population that's beaten down, that, is counting on having jobs and money and so forth. And if we kill all the trade, they're going to have a very unhappy bunch of people there that, might decide whether they want to start questioning the whole communist regime. And, they might have another Tiananmen thing, which is, I think, their biggest fear. So they've got to, both sides really have to kind of try and figure out a way to, to negotiate a solution. These two parents, I mean, on behalf of the kids, these two parents have to kind of work it out, and I think we probably will. I'm not sure that Trump's rhetoric and throwing a bomb into the, global trade picture was a good idea, but he did it. And fortunately, Besant's now talked him back down, walked him back. And I mean, the problem is that this is a 50-year problem, right? Fiat currency has been ruining the world since 1971. You can't solve it in one presidential administration. You just can't.
So before you guys rudely interrupted me with this spaces-like thing, I was listening. I want to give a heads up to people. Stephanie Pomboy and Adam Taggart are talking to Ted Seidel about the pension crisis. And the numbers are way scarier than I thought. And I wrote about the pension crisis that literally was uploaded verbatim to Solari. So I know quite a bit about the pension crisis. This was awfulness. The pensions are beyond screwed, just beyond screwed. There's just no way out. And that's going to cause trouble beyond comprehension.
Well, and we can't cut back Social Security expenses in the regular way, which would be to, means test and, raise the age and all that kind of stuff. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do it in real terms. We're just going to make it so that your $4,000 or $3,000 Social Security check doesn't buy shit. Depreciate the value, depreciate the purchasing power of the currency by 80%, and you'll get your Social Security check. It just won't cover much. I mean, they've got to do a monetary reset, and the $64,000 question is, how do they do it? I mean, I hate Roosevelt in so many ways, but actually one thing he did that was intelligent was when he devalued the dollar versus gold in 33 and 34. And 34, that showed they had the best recovery of the entire 10-year period in 34 when he did that. Now then, then the Smoot-Hawley stuff kicked in, and they didn't let, there were a lot of laws that didn't let the labor prices set correctly and so on and so forth, and that's why it dragged on for so long. But if we had really enlightened leadership and we would do a one-time reset here to sound money, I think, that's the thing to do. And furthermore, the strategic thing to do, as Jason Lowery has pointed out, and as most of the Bitcoiners on this call know, would be to leapfrog them and reset to Bitcoin and let them go with gold.
Well, and then Matt Pines floated the idea of actively doing that, and instead of letting it passively happen, you actively dump the gold into the market and devalue the gold at the same time you monetize the Bitcoin.
And that's kind of what Saylor said. Let's sell the gold and then use it to buy Bitcoin. There's one small problem with that, and I think it's fascinating. Remember how Trump and Bessent were talking about, we're going to go audit the gold. Notice how that's gotten really, really quiet. I mean, my sense is they got read in about what's really going on with the gold. And I have a lot of friends, names I don't want to name, but one guy who's a very senior guy in London who I was with a few weeks ago, and he knew people in the Johnson administration. There's no doubt in his mind, and there's documentation to prove, that Johnson shipped gold to the London gold pool between 1962 and 1968, and it never came back. And Johnson felt screwed by that, because they promised it would come back and it didn't. So Fort Knox is deficient.
They also said they were going to audit the Bitcoin.
Do you think it's
too.
deficient, or do you think we don't own it?
Well, that's the matter. Possession's 9/10, Dave. If we have it there, if we sold a lot of paper against it, that doesn't matter. We can just renege on those contracts.
Right. So
what
you
really
think that
matters
actually the bar counts are down? You think the bar
That's
counts
right.
are down?
Okay. To me, what matters, in a war, in a financial war, what matters, possession will be 9/10. So yeah, we might have loaned some of it out too on paper, but that doesn't matter.
Well, it could be that in the current regime, that 50% of it is owned by other countries.
Absolutely.
Now, I agree with you.
And we can also say tough shit. We're not honoring that.
No, I got that. I just wanted to know which one you were saying.
I think the bars are deficient by definition.
You remember when they said the bars were peeling and shit like that? Do you remember those stories from about 6 or 7 years ago?
Here's a great data point. Remember this was probably 10 years ago. Remember when Germany asked for a lot of their gold back?
And we couldn't give it to them.
We told them it would take them 7 years, and we actually got it back to them. They were satisfied. But guess what? In theory, they sent it to us after the war, with the notion being we want to send it over there in case Russia overruns us. We want you to have our gold. So that's why they did it. Well, we didn't send, and they sent bars. It's gold comes in bars and with hallmarks and everything else. You can tell which bar is which. We didn't send them back what they sent us. We sent them back gold. It's not, they had the right to say, give me bar number 1, 2, 3, because that's what I sent to you. We didn't give them bar number 1, 2, 3. We gave them a bar, but not the one they sent us. So that further cements the suspiciousness of it all. And then there's an analyst named Ronan Manley who's on Twitter. I highly recommend you all follow. He's probably the deepest guy in the gold market, and he dug into some of the paperwork on it all. And there's just no doubt in my mind that we just don't have all that gold. But by the way, though, that may be why all the gold imports in the U.S. have been surging so much recently. Maybe Bessent and Trump said to themselves, all right, if we're thinking of going, remember, you got to kind of read the clues. It was really important when last summer Bessent said, this monetary system is unbalanced and not working, and we need to change it. And I think it needs to be changed in a way that looks something like Bretton Woods, and I want to be at the table when that occurs. Now, that to me, that's a very strong signal that he understands Triffin's dilemma and he knows we got to fix it. And so, and I know Trump isn't smart enough to understand it on his own, but I also know we've heard that, you know, when Trump came in and interviewed Bessent to have the role as Treasury Secretary, he said, you know, how the hell are we going to get out of this? How are we going to deal with this debt? What are we going to do? And my sense is Bessent, you know, is thinking we got to do a monetary reset here. You know, and then he said, we're going to do an audit of Fort Knox and the gold. Well, he got read in and he did kind of an informal audit and realized, oh, fuck, we don't have what we say we have. So now all the imports are coming back. I mean, this is just Larry's crazy theory. I don't know if any of this
Well,
is true.
Bassett also assured us that it does get audited and we know we have it. He said that.
Did he? I don't know.
Yeah, he did.
Early on he
He
did,
did.
but he's been real quiet about it recently. Like I say, I think he got read in.
I think something that Bessent knows here is that you can't, you know, one of Trump's ambitions is to rehome the American manufacturing base, and that's part of what tariffs are about, at least in Trump's mind. And, you know, I think Bessent knows that you can't rehome the American manufacturing base without solving Triffin's dilemma. And that if our chief export is dollars, we're just going to keep exporting it and getting cheap plastic crap from China. And, you know, there needs to be, you know, it's really interesting, these comments he's made, you know, about there needing to be a new Bretton Woods, and then saying that Bitcoin is a rising store of value. And then you think about some of the, you know, talk about, you know, demonetizing gold and remonetizing Bitcoin at the same time. And I don't know, you know, do we have, like, you know, the minds in the government that are capable of doing that? Like, I would love to see that happen. To me, that's the preferred outcome. You know,
I think Bessent has it. What I don't know is if they have the political courage to do it.
right? It's a big move, big bold.
It's an enormous move, and to get from here to there, and the entire Keynesian establishment's going to go absolutely batshit. This is the stupidest thing ever, you know, proposed. And so, you know, it is what it is.
By the way, if we do end up doing that, 100%, the NSA invented Bitcoin. You know, like if that move ends up
I
happening.
don't know about that. I don't think the NSA invented Bitcoin, but maybe they did. I don't think so. But
Well, they did say, alongside auditing the gold, they were going to audit the Bitcoin. And what if they come up with 1 million coins in this audit? Because the NSA invented Bitcoin.
How many
has those
coins are there
wallets. I mean,
supposed to be? How many are there supposed
well, there's
to
1
be
million
right now?
coins supposedly missing in Satoshi's wallets. So that's like 1 million coins I'm referring
They're
to.
supposed to have, like, the U.S. government has like 180,000, but some of them
no,
are.
they have over 210. They have over 200, and we haven't heard much about where those are either, and who's got the keys to those. Yeah,
But to think that the U.S. government's going to do an audit to find 3 Bitcoin is kind of ridiculous. Like, that's not material. So it was a weird thing to say in my mind.
The FBI has been mining Bitcoin for a while now. That's known. So, like, they have Bitcoin. We don't know how much.
And going back to rebasing manufacturing quick, I think there's 2 parallel paths that they're going to take different approaches to. One is bring back the Rust Belt. Hey, blue collar jobs are coming back. We're going to make stuff here. The other one is strategic industries. We need chips, medicine, supply chains, drones, rare earths, whatever. That one has to happen for our own future. Whether or not that actually brings back jobs, very few. Do we really think we're going to onshore the shitty jobs in America? No. Let's pull Mexico in. Let's have our side of the world be our new manufacturing base that we can have strong alliances with. That's the only way that makes sense to me.
It's intelligently, though, they've done a really good job in a lot of respects. I mean, identifying the fact that our consumer base is a very big thing that we shouldn't just give everyone in the world access to. That's a really intelligent thought on their part. And so, you know, I mean, I think, and Groman's done work on this, it's very good, that shows, I mean, one of the things they've got to get the dollar down. I mean, the dollar just, you know, that's the Triffin's dilemma thing, HODL. I mean, they really need to talk or do things that suggest that the dollar's going, and they're doing it. I mean, they're doing all these capital controls. I mean, if the stock market falls apart, I mean, think about investing in. A lot of the U.S. stock market is foreign money that comes here because we are the safest place to be. Well, if suddenly your CEO or your president starts doing crazy shit, suddenly we don't seem like the safest place to be anymore. So, you know, maybe it was an intentional plan. Foreigners start to pull their money. The stock market goes down 10%. Then the dollar goes down 10%. So if you're a foreigner and you had stock that you bought at the end of last year, the market's down 15% and our currency's down 10%. So in less than a quarter, you've lost 25% of your investment. And you might be thinking to yourself, gee, am I going to hang around there or am I going to pull more out? And you know, I mean, to me, this is the relentless bid under gold and Bitcoin. I mean, they just are, you know, the U.S. Treasury is just proving itself to be a third world-like entity. And, you know, what gold is telling us is
Hey Bitcoiners, I'm heading to Bitcoin 2025 in Las Vegas from May 27 to May 29th, and you need to be there. This isn't just another conference, it's the ultimate Bitcoin party. Grab your ticket now using promo code MATRIX or at the link in the description. See you in Vegas, freaks. Let's make this one legendary.
Is we don't trust you, Fed. We don't trust you, America. We don't trust the government as it's currently constituted.
Not to mention that we stole Russian assets, which I think will turn out to be an historically important moment.
That was a stupid.
That was beyond stupid. That was during World War II. We did not confiscate German assets.
It was a jump the shark moment for America, truly.
So, I mean, my sense is, you sell the dollar, you sell the bonds, you sell U.S. stocks, you buy gold, you buy Bitcoin, and, all the people who got wealthy on this fiat bubble are going to see their wealth severely diminished. And all the people who understand what real money is are going to, it's the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And I think it's going to be rather stunning. To me, it's going to be the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the world.
Let me ask you, Hodler, something. This has been troubling me. I'm highly sympathetic to your world. I would not have been invited if I was just an anti-Hodler douchebag. At least two of you have tried to talk me intensively into becoming a Hodler, and I'm watching. And there's something I will see that will get me to do it. But right now I'm on the sidelines. This will be simplistic, but you'll get my point. Let's say Bitcoin became the currency of the realm. Does that not replace the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and maybe, one or two others with Stacy, Max, and John?
So I've thought about this a lot. I've thought about this a lot.
Right? All of a sudden it's a wealth transfer of unimaginable proportions by that model. I have no idea how much Max and Stacy have, but I've seen videos of Max and Stacy hyping Bitcoin in the pennies.
So think about it like this. There's an X here where Bitcoin is ascending and fiat is descending, right? And there's an inception point there in the X in the middle of the X where there's going to be you're going to be able to exchange your equivalent fiat value for Bitcoin value. So that's one of the bad things about Bitcoin actually, is that it's very easy to port your ill-gotten gains into Bitcoin. So as long as you're halfway intelligent as one of the current elites of the world, you're going to be able to get your Bitcoin allocation and maintain your position. Now,
but aren't there like 300 people controlling a huge percentage of the Bitcoin? Is that not true? Is that not true?
Bitcoin rich list, you'll see that it's pretty widely distributed, and it'll become more widely distributed, Dave. And yeah, there will be some people who will be silly rich, and so that Bitcoin won't be, and maybe they won't sell, and so that Bitcoin won't be available for sale. But the important part is all the balance can't grow beyond the algorithm size, and that's really the important issue.
No, I'm just saying that all of a sudden,
I hear what you're saying.
The top 300 become a whole new top 300.
No. So let me give you my best thing here, Dave. Is that Bitcoin is an elite it's an elite revolution, right? Like you're saying. But in any elite revolution, I think the best you can do is get about half the seats at the table. I don't think you can ever get all the seats unless you kill everybody that was currently at the table, right? You have a full-on, French Revolution style guillotining of the former elites. So I think Bitcoiners are going to get about half the seats at the table, and half the elites that were sluggish and stupid and didn't see the new paradigm coming.
We'll get the other half.
Yeah, they're going to be gone, and we're going to have a negotiation between the new elites and the old elites about rulemaking. And we're going to determine who can and who can't make rules and what the rules are, which is what all elite revolutions are about.
Yeah, but the base money will be rules without rulers.
So is the lagging of silver telling us something about gold? So the gold silver ratio, which everyone thinks is going to regress to the mean, I'm sitting there watching this going, wait a minute, sovereigns don't give a shit about silver. They give a shit about gold. So the fact that silver's lagging, the fact that it's doing well tells me people are bidding it because they think it's going to follow gold. But gold's really moving independent of silver right now, and it tells me that this is a sovereign sort of level.
Absolutely.
Play.
I mean, silver is poor man's gold. The stock to flow is terrible compared to gold. Most people can't afford an ounce of silver, and history shows.
2 ounces of gold.
Yeah, it's an ounce of gold, and history shows that silver tends to move last and move most violently. You know, it's like a hard money shit coin. And silver's going to come along for the ride, Dave. Don't worry. I got a ton of it, and it's going to $100. But it's been largely demonetized, and it really, the thing that I think keeps the bid in there is that there's a lot of use that it just doesn't go away, and and at the margin, it's not like we have a big stockpile sitting around. I mean, everyone can melt down their tea set, but we're using it like crazy in solar, electronics, cars, and now Toshiba's got this solid state battery that absorbs a ton of
It's a silver base. Yeah, yeah.
So I'm not too worried about silver participating in the whole thing, but
Dave's right that it's not going to be from sovereigns because bimetallism is fucking retarded, and
We have a new bimetallism,
right,
Bitcoin,
it's Bitcoin
and
and
gold.
gold, exactly. Yeah,
Just envision how much gold we're going to find with AI and computers.
right. There's a lot more gold in the earth that we haven't dug up yet.
For the record, I was buying silver eagles in the $3 zone.
Oh, me too, Dave. I got a bunch of them. I paid 6 and 9 for a long time ago. Yeah, I mean, I got junk silver that I was buying at those prices. And HODL, you're right. I mean, we will find more gold. And if you listen to, Bix Weir and I don't know, Jim Rickards, I mean, they think that they found an enormous gold deposit in the Grand Canyon, and it's been covered up for all these years, and that we're just kind of sitting on it. Everybody knows it. Everybody in the government knows it's there.
It's our sovereign stash.
Yeah,
And we're probably sitting on tons of rare earth materials.
Well,
under
we just
North
found
Carolina
a huge deposit of lithium under the salt
exactly.
in California.
But if you can't get it out, it's no good. I live on a lake. Okay, I'm not a fishery. I live on a
Price
lake
goes
where,
up. We'll
where
get
the
it out. We'll turn on the
largemouth
more
bass
expensive
record,
equipment.
smallmouth and largemouth were broken. The New York State largemouth bass record were broken within the last 3 years. On my lake, I own a house hanging off it, but I'm not a fishery. I still got to catch the damn things, and I right. And so to say that we have, that's why I don't like the gold miners, because they always talk about their reserves. I go, you haven't proven to me you can get them out of the ground and make money. You guys suck.
That is the problem with that business. It's a very tough business, but price fixes a lot of problems, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Is Cedric
And technology.
Yeah.
How about platinum? How about platinum?
Well, so here's the thing: on all of these scarce assets, there's going to be a bid for them if there's a massive deval, right? It's just going to be what's the fastest horse in the race. They're all going to participate, but what is the best horse in the race? And for us, we believe it's Bitcoin.
The most reliable horse in the race. And there is a scenario where, maybe everything crashes by somewhere between 35 and 95%, Bitcoin included, and we go through hell. And so, this is not financial advice. This is not everyone who buys Bitcoin is going to get rich quick. It's really more of a long-term thing. To kind of honor everyone's time, though, I do want to we've talked a lot about the fourth turning, and I want to talk a little bit about maybe what a first turning would look like. Right, because we all kind of agree a fourth turning's happening, and it can kind of play out in any emergent way. But how do we come out of it? Is there maybe a new American republic?
Yeah, I have a view of that. I don't know, maybe you guys want to hear or not, but I think when we return to sound money, I see things really, really breaking badly. I see gold and Bitcoin holders doing extremely well. The people who tend to get involved in politics are the people who have the money and the time to do so. I think the average Bitcoiner is, generally speaking, an Austrian and generally speaking, a libertarian. And I think that, when the society is turned on its ear and Bitcoin is the new form of money and Bitcoiners are the richest people in the world, they're going to come in and say, look, we got to return to the original premise of the Constitution, which is to say that it's limited, and government's limited in what it can do. I know that if I were president, I would argue that there's really only one thing the government should be, and that is a fair referee. I mean, I'm not an anarchist. I don't want to have zero government. I think government makes sense because I want to have jails and cops and people that make sure that everyone plays by the same set of rules. But I'm of the belief that we could spend if everybody. Think about a world where everybody paid 10% VAT, no income tax, but everybody paid 10% VAT on everything you bought. I think that world would provide more than enough resources to have cops and courts. And I think that's all that your government really needs to do. And I think that once the currency fails, that's what we'll go to, that we'll naturally gravitate there. And everyone will know that, Social Security was a fugazi, and all these fucking things. They're all fugazis. They're all just fucking
So government's got to shrink like crazy.
right. And we gotta rethink what it is, and I think that's what'll happen, just kind of as a natural event. Who will want to put up with anything other than that, in my view? And by the way, that would be an incredibly great world. I mean, you unleash AI, you've got sound money, you don't allocate capital to shit coins. I mean, think of all the money that's been wasted on just stupid shit.
NFTs.
Yeah, well, you don't go out. You don't.
What are
go out
those
and
worth now?
You ever heard of the definition of an NFT? Someone said, "What's an NFT?" And the guy says, "Well, imagine that everyone in the town is banging your wife, but you have the marriage certificate."
Dave, what is your reaction to what Larry said? Because, does that sound too good to be true to you? And like, do you all see sort of America coming through this and being that a great place to be again, where it's a fair playing field and things make sense and we have sound money? Or is that like way too hard for us as a country to get to when we're facing all the things Brandon talked about all this internal combustion and sort of conflict that's really apparent? I mean, I really sit down at the dinner table and I really get this like really tension I'm talking about the bigger dinners at family dinners like Thanksgiving. In 1995, like whatever people were really, there were three things people couldn't talk about then. And maybe like religion, sex and politics, or sex and money. Now you can throw politics in there and like it's vicious. Maybe it was race back then,
You
like
walk on eggshells.
yeah, and it's tearing families apart, and people are doing things. Yeah, but people are doing things based on their politics or their team. Like they don't even necessarily agree or disagree. It's just like, that's what my team's doing. I hate you for not doing it.
When your life is threatened and your well-being is threatened, you get extremely tribal, and so you're willing to follow a MAGA guy or a blue guy, I mean, whatever it might be, you're willing to follow who is absolutely convinced it's the other team that's wrong and the other team that's evil. And I mean, as Dave, somebody said, like 40% of the country thinks violence is acceptable. I mean, I think there's a big, and the political parties are set up to divide people.
Yeah, what if both people are right? Both sides are right, like both, just for the wrong reasons, even maybe. But they're like,
well, they're both
these
right
teams
that
suck.
something's broken. I mean, I look at like what AOC and Bernie Sanders say, and some of what they say is true. I mean, it's it's an unfair system. Now they have the wrong solution, and they're idiots.
So the idea of redistribution is wrong. The problem is that the distribution mechanism is broken. So once you've distributed it wrong, you're in trouble. So to respond to Larry, I think his model's right. The U.S. has phenomenal capital. The capital being inland waterways, resources, all sorts of stuff. So we will still have that. We will have infrastructure as long as we don't bomb it out. But I do believe the valley of death stands between us and that new world. And the problem is that Larry and I might be old enough to be dead by the time that shows up in earnest. And so the trick is to survive the valley of death, in my opinion. I think that the least loser is I think if you really think you're going to do well under these conditions, I think you should be playing the defensive game and trying, and for all your house is going to be burned down by an angry mob, right? So you and I'm not ready to fight off an angry mob. I'm too old for that shit. And so the other thing, you wouldn't believe the depression at Cornell, for example. You can't imagine the level of despondency here. I've got colleagues who literally have spent their careers building research groups, and they're hard-working guys. This view of academia being a big waste of space is just not correct. There are departments that are a big waste of space, but great stuff is getting done. They have no idea how they're going to pay any salaries of any of their students, of any of their postdocs, their programs. I wrapped up my program last year. So I like to say I wrapped up my program last year by decision. And this year, my colleagues have wrapped up their programs. They literally don't know how they're going to pay for anything. And that's the Trump ham-fistedness. here's what's missing on that story. Where are the academic thought leaders out there on Meet the Press saying, let me explain to you what an endowment is. Let me explain to you what an overhead rate is. Let me explain to you where the money goes. And they're not out there. And I do it on podcasts all the time, and they're not out there. And I asked the former VP of Cornell, why aren't they out there? She says, I don't know. I don't know. Instead, the Harvard president gets on national news and starts talking about why we can't give up on DEI. And I go, would someone slap that guy? We're going to give up DEI because we got to get Harvard's $9 billion back. I mean, Jesus Christ.
There seems to be a real cowardice in academia, especially from people who have tenure, right? Like, it's like, I mean, the point of tenure is to have a fucking backbone. That's the point of it.
But you have to believe that too. I mean, I got canceled in 2020. It sucks. Cancel culture was an astroturfed authoritarian movement. Cancel culture was not some grassroots thing. It was someone did it. Someone designed it.
Well, hold on. Let's go to the theory on that one. So, in my opinion, I mean, you might be right. There could be some people pulling strings, but I think cancel culture emerging during fourth turnings is what we should expect.
I agree.
Yeah. And the reason is we look around and the system sucks. So we're like, hey, maybe the problem's capitalism. Let's try a little communism. Let's try a little fascism. Let's try something new. You go back to the 30s, back to academia, all the intelligentsia, they're all communists. And then you have the fascists, and people are trying to figure out what the new system is. Today, young people are wearing hammers and sickles, and they're all communists, anti-fascists.
Che Guevara.
Yeah, without the historical context to back it up. But their instinct is right. Their instinct is something's broken, look elsewhere. And the same instinct brings up a situation where you say, hey, we need to unify as a group in order to get something big done. So if you're not with us, you're against us. And that amplifies the divide. That creates cancel culture emergently. And so to me, I would expect that. Now, I also expect many people are independently pulling strings for their own purposes. I think both of those are true.
Now, here's why I tell you cancel culture is astroturf. My experience is it came on so fast and so effectively and so automated that it couldn't possibly have been the students getting angry and all of a sudden deciding to lose their shit. It's just like the BRICS showing up during the George Floyd riots, conveniently located right in the middle of the city.
Who put the fucking
right?
bricks there? Yeah.
So that is fourth turning.
By the way, that's 2
right.
miles from
What
my
city?
house.
What city? Was this San Francisco?
Minneapolis.
Yeah. So both are true. Both are true. So cancel culture had people lighting the torches for it.
Right, you bring up the
and then
BRICS.
People getting mad.
And then I think of the bridges being crashed by boats and trains going off the rails and the food being poisoned. And these are things that, and the fentanyl crossing the border. And these are things that I say, I don't know if we're going to get through the border itself. These are things where it feels like self-sabotage by design almost. How much do you guys think this is like fourth turning anomalies and worlds crumbling and institutions are just breaking and, we lost a bridge? Versus like, I don't know, something weird is happening and the weather is changing, all this. And I'm just throwing all the tinfoil stuff out there. But like, and that maybe by design it's so that we don't get through the fourth turning, something like that. And that we don't turn a corner.
I think Brandon's right. That is fourth turning. Brandon's right. That is fourth turning. But how much of this is? But it's organized.
Sure,
though.
some things could be emergent, and that doesn't mean that some people aren't throwing.
There's this quote from Gone with the Wind where he says, what people don't seem to realize is that there's just as much money to be made in the wreckage of a society or a civilization as there is in the upbuilding of one. And I think that's across the Western world. I think that's a lot of what we're seeing going on.
Some people would rather rule over a city that's crumbled than.
I think there's a lot of money to be made. It's like broken window.
Look at Chicago.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And if you assume that the world has to go through a financial reset and you have to go through a hard time, even if you don't cause it, you're aware of it. And if you have power, you're going to position yourself to benefit from it. Right. And so I think 100% that's true. When I think about the border and when I think about COVID, okay, we have too many old people. We can't pay them. So let's launch the virus to kill all the old people. Then what are we going to do? Let's open the border and get a bunch of low-skilled peasants in the country who will vote in a mono-blob vote, and we don't have to really pay them. That kind of starts to look like a smart conspiracy to solve a lot of our problems.
Except the border crossing was preceded by exactly the same move in Europe.
Exactly.
I'm
It's by design. It's by design.
it looks like it's by design also to be destructive. It looks destructive to me. It doesn't look like just, bringing voters across. I hate that argument. Just
It's a
rig the
narco
machines,
tyranny.
for Christ's sake.
It's a narco
Right.
tyranny of the highest order. Because if you're an English person or an Irish person and you have an unapproved thought on Facebook where you go, there are a lot of stabby Muslims around, then boom, straight to the gulag. But if you're a stabby Muslim, you can stab somebody and be out the next day, right? So who benefits from that? Somebody is benefiting.
That'd be interesting when a whole society maybe goes to war and there's a lot of young people not from that society, who now reside. It's like all the men go off to war, and now you have a whole bunch of young men without women and children in your society.
You got to send them to war. They're fodder. They're cannon fodder. If they don't know they're cannon fodder, they're confused. Like that's partially why they were brought over here.
Young men need either a family or they need to be cannon fodder, because young males are destructive without some sort of purpose or guidelines around their life.
No, I do think there's some part of me that thinks, okay, the people that are destroying Western society live in Western society. They want to continue living in Western society. I don't think they want their granddaughter to live under Sharia law. Yeah, some of them are Malthusians and they want to genocide half the world. Sure. Who doesn't? I mean, I'm kidding. But
your mission: build the blockchain, stack sats, and resist surveillance. You'll need strategy, stealth, and a little luck. Welcome to Block Hunters.
Built by Bitcoiners, backed by the community. Block Hunters learn Bitcoin by playing.
We played it at family night and everyone loved it. Finally, a game that gets Bitcoin.
Ready to orange pill the fun way? Head to blockhunters.com and use the code BTCMatrix for 10% off your order.
There has to be something that they know that we don't, where there's some sort of global total surveillance panopticon, AI system where you can modify people's behavior, minority report style system that you can turn on, and that it's not a problem to you to bring in all of these people because you understand you can track and trace and control them. And that what you need to do in order to turn on that system is to antagonize the local populations until they beg for you to turn on the system. To me, I think there's something like that going on. That's the only thing that makes any kind of sense, because I look out and I don't see it making a lot of sense to continue doing this mass migration in the Western world.
Yeah, the arsonist is the firefighter, and we'll give up all liberties in the name of security. Very quickly. We learned that during COVID. They didn't even have to try very hard, as far as I'm concerned.
They just gave people Krispy Kremes. They were like, turn in your neighbors for a Krispy Kreme, and then people were like, sure, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah, COVID was a very depressing event. I mean, until COVID came along, I thought to myself, how did Germany, a civilized nation, ever do what it did? And then COVID happened. I was like, oh, I get it.
And we're still scarred by it. We're still wounded. Even people who I don't think realize they are. When I go out and I look in the world, sometimes I keep hearing the lyrics of Eleanor Rigby, darning her socks in the night when there's nobody there. And then I'm thinking, is that because I'm seeing the world kind of going through the motions, or is that just my head? Right? Am I seeing something in the society that's changed, or is my head changed?
No, you're correct. Nobody wants to talk about this. There was no mea culpa for COVID.
Actually, the White House just did a mea culpa.
There was
the White House.
That's true. That's true. They did, and that was a great. I read that webpage.
But it was 547 pages. The whole thing.
Right. It broke it down,
the
first
bullets.
couple of bullet points exactly as we all knew it had occurred or transpired, and we're told that we were crazy, conspiracy, racist, xenophobe, whatever.
What was that title for the listeners? What was that title? Remind me. The White House one. People ought to go read it.
Oh yeah, it's on the whitehouse.gov.
Yeah,
so
whitehouse.gov came out, and the
title. The origins of COVID-19, I think, is the title.
Lab leak, exactly. And the bulleted summary is as though were written by this group. I mean, it's really extraordinary.
Well, because we were right. It's what I mean. It's not because we have conspiracy theorists in the White House. It's because we were correct about what was going on.
It's stunning, actually.
In my opinion, that was not a proper mea culpa. I think that was a symbolic mea culpa by the White House, but I think the true mea culpa would heal the divide between the left and the right. Right now, we're totally separate and we don't trust each other. Those who are right about COVID would like an apology, and those on the left would say, hey, fog of war, we all did our best. Let's all forget about
And
it.
the answer to that is fuck you. That's the answer.
Correct. People don't forget. And so my honest opinion, the best approach forward if our country had a backbone would be to say, hey guys, we got a little overboard during COVID. We're now going to publicly execute those who caused the problem on TV, and we're all going to move forward right now and clean up the mess.
Or put them in jail, or put them in jail for the rest of their lives. I mean,
Or at least out them.
yeah.
I'm not even sure. I don't know what, in all these podcasts I've done over the last couple of years, I don't know whether how much energy should be directed towards actually punishment and how much should be directed towards moving forward. It's a real delicate balancing act. But I do want to know, for example, how many FBI guys were at January 6th and things like that. They're just answers. I want to know who tried to shoot Trump and what agency did they work for and how much was the Secret Service in on the whole thing. And
I mean, you would think I think every administration's a bait and switch, but you would think that Trump would be the perfect guy to answer all those questions. I mean, he was the one ousted on January 6th in a way. I used ousted, unelected, and sort of on the other side of that. He was the one whose presidency and economy was derailed by COVID. You would think that he would want to lean into a mea culpa.
This assumes that Trump has the ability to do so. I mean, think about it like this. Like, okay,
No, I don't think he has the ability
well,
to.
the
And I don't think
DOJ's
he's
quiet.
Changed. I think
the
he was in on it
DOJ
then
right
and
now
on
is
it now.
quiet, which is good news because the last thing we need them to be doing is spewing more bullshit out there like Pam Bondi's folders, right? The DOJ, if they're doing their job well, is a long ways from really getting this right. Building a legal case against anyone is hard. They should be quietly banging away on these problems, and we shouldn't be hearing about it.
No one's going to jail. No one.
But I want to hear
banging
about
away
it.
on anything.
I do
don't
want to
believe
know
any of it.
I want the answer key, to use an academic term. I want the answer key minimally. And then Fauci can walk through the streets and get tomatoes thrown at him for the rest of his life. I'm okay with that.
Transparency, though, is key for building trust. I agree. I think that's the most important. I think that if we're going to be bullish on Elon rabble-rousing, I think that's the one takeaway that I don't know what the latest is, but maybe 3 months ago, that's what I thought. I was like, maybe he can bring some radical transparency to the system. Appears like that's not the case.
They dumped so much through Elon out onto us that they did not even filter and decipher that. There's just oodles of like, how are they not digging into this more? Everything just gets blown back into the, even the people who were complaining about the nerds working on all the social, they're not even complaining about that anymore.
Well, but they
Everyone's moved on.
might be working on it.
It was like
though.
we could have spent 4 years on that issue the way we spent 4 years on Russia Gate.
No,
No
you don't.
one's working on
We
anything,
don't
Dave. You
know.
have so
I
much hope.
understand your pessimism, but what they started out doing is with headlines. Now the question is, are they doing the heavy lifting or not? And if they are, I'm not sure we should be hearing about it yet.
All we're going to get maybe at best is an external revenue service, an additional agency looking at everything we do, auditing us, and asking for a cut. I think that's best. That's where they're going with this. There's no elimination of the IRS. There's going to be no elimination of income tax.
They
They're
shouldn't
teasing
eliminate
that
the income tax.
so that you go, yeah. They're making a lot of arguments and sort of like different things. They were exposing this. Maybe they'll ask for that or whatever. But I don't think you're going to get anything good. And I don't think anything real is going to be exposed. And I don't know when we're ever going to get
I'm giving them a
transparency, is my
honeymoon
great
period
point.
of a year. And that is, I'm just saying, look, I'm not watching a lot. I'm overwhelmed by all the headlines and shit. And I can read 2 articles that say exactly the opposite thing. And so I'm saying, look, a year from now, I will then produce a scorecard and say, did they follow through? It's too short a time. We got a lot of headline shit. We got a lot of smoke. We got very few flames. But I think we have to, if we don't stay optimistic, that means everyone's turned against them. And so I think we have to say, I think the storyline for us who hoped has to be, they're still working on it. And if they fail, then we'll know who to string up and hang off the bridge upside down.
By the way, the reason to stay optimistic as well is because
No, could be.
they need a lot. We all know they need a lot more than 4 years. 4 years is not going to get it done. So like we got to stay optimistic so that we can get maybe Vance in there.
I don't
we can
trust
keep it going for a
Vance,
while.
interestingly enough.
You don't like Vance?
Yeah, what are we
because
even
of the
talking
Teal?
about?
Because of the
Yeah,
Teal
it was too
connections?
quick.
Is that what-
Yeah.
He went from Harvard Law
Too quick.
School to Teal
Too thick.
and Eric Schmidt. How do you do that? Now,
From Yale to a home run hitting hedge fund.
well, he was
Right,
good
I
for
like-
the
I like
tickets.
to-
I think Vance is the best.
Are you talking about Vicente now, or?
JD Vance.
Vance is already on IMDb. He's a screenwriter.
So I have to be optimistic. I have to force myself to give him a break. I have to force myself to give him a break and say this, as Larry said, they can't do it in one presidency, which means we also have to not.
That implies
But if they're doing it, you're
it.
not going to see
I
it
don't
if they're
know.
doing it.
I think they're resetting the money. I don't know if they're doing it in terms of becoming more
But if they're
transparent
doing it,
and
you
more
shouldn't
fair.
be seeing it yet, is my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair.
I agree.
I agree with that. This is a multi-year project, and they've got to bring the.
So
country
Cedric,
along
if I were a
with it.
betting man, I'd bet you're right.
I think they could do a much. I think they could do a much
Me too.
better
Me
job.
too. I'm getting an itchy hand right
You
now.
gotta hang tough.
I
You
think
gotta
they
hang
could do a much
tough.
better job of communicating.
I think everyone's going to hang tough. Have to hang tough.
What they're trying to do. I mean, they're trying to do something that is really hard to do, and if you're not, they need to communicate more rather than less. I mean, the fact that we're all guessing, and we're on their side in a lot of ways, that's not good. I mean, when this whole thing blows apart, somebody, maybe it's Michael Saylor, I don't know who it'll be. Somebody has got to stand up and say, okay, look, guys, we had a great country in 1946, and then we let the CIA get too powerful, and we started overthrowing countries all around the world. And then Dulles and some other people got upset that we didn't go to war with Russia, and so they killed Kennedy. And I mean, we need to just lay all that shit out there, like it's just fact, and say, and based on all of that, and based on the way we've drifted away from the Constitution, which said only gold and silver can be money, here's what the reset is going to look like. And we need you all to be on board with this, and you can, contribute your ideas, etc. But, we're going to try and jam this through, and it'll be, multi-state constitutional amendment. And things, what I pray is that things will be, I don't want things to be bad, but I think what will happen is things will be bad enough, and this new leader will be smart enough that everyone will go, and he won't be, this isn't a Hitler or a strongman or anything else. This is a true patriot who will understand the entire story and lay it out to the populace and say, this is what happened, this is where we went wrong, we're suffering pain, we might have a little more pain to go, but here's what the new world is going to look like. And that's when and so that there's a new covenant. The new covenant is we're going to amend the Constitution. Congressmen can only serve for 2 years. I mean, look, I'd be happy if government people made a ton of fucking money and were taken care of for life if they could never then work for the industries that they were regulating. Do you know what I mean? I mean, what we want is fairness, and so, and what we also want is transparency. We don't want the CIA to be able to conduct extrajudicial, activity all over the world. I mean, so many things that don't make sense. I mean, we haven't talked about 9/11. We haven't talked about how, Obama beat Hillary because he was a peace president.
It worked out well, didn't it?
And Hillary was right, exactly. Well, and and I think everybody on this call knows what happened is he got in there and he got read in, and they said, look, Barack, you got a choice. Either you're going to make $100 million, have a $16 million house on Martha's Vineyard, and be the first black president, but you're going to do what we say, which means we're going to keep Guantanamo open, we're going to do extrajudicial rendition, we're going to bomb and attack Syria, we're going to use drones all over the place, or you can try and be this peace president hero, and you're going to look like JFK. Pick one. I mean, this is the problem. This country really isn't even run by the president. I mean, and I think Trump is trying his best to restore, a country being run by the president. But I think even there are limits on what he can do. I mean, look, they almost got him in Butler. I mean, a person that we all know that I was with in Bedford that's very high placed in the Bitcoin area, knows a lot of security people in DC, says that the inside story is that Butler was an inside job.
There were so many inconsistencies.
It seemed like an inside job. Like, what else could it be? Oh, the roof is too slanty. You look at the roof, it's like this. I get up there with 8 beers in me.
So the bottom line, guys, is it's like we're living in what was that movie? It was a fake movie? The Truman Show. Yeah, we're living in the Truman Show. It's all fake. It's all fugazi, and so we need somebody. So here's my dream. So the currency fails. Bitcoin
That's his dream.
At the top of the moon.
The currency fails.
Yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, and Michael Saylor's the richest man in the world, and he's actually an American patriot, and he's also one of the smartest men in the world, and he steps up and he lays all this out just like a case, a manifesto, and says this is what we got to do. And the problem with democracy compared to, one of the reasons China's kicking our ass is that when you have state control of your industrial policy, it's easy to fucking do the right thing. You know what I mean? I'm not suggesting we should go communist, but what we really need are super enlightened leaders that can see the whole picture and communicate it to the American people and take us to the right place. And I believe those leaders exist, and I believe all of us we're getting all the pieces. I remember my father's deceased, and he was a military veteran, and I told him the CIA killed. He argued with me till the end of his days that I was out of my mind, that the government would never murder a president. And yet I think we can all now agree that it's blatantly obvious that the government murdered a president. and so until we solve these core issues of mistrust of the government, we're just rearranging the deck chairs, guys. We just, and the only chance I think we have of solving them is a strong, enlightened leader that will lay it all out there for everybody. And I think everybody will go, God damn, the guy's right.
But the system really has to collapse you have to clear the niche for someone to fill it. And right now it's filled with hopeless corruption.
And we all have to do the work. We all have to have the data and know where the bones are buried, so that we can educate, so that leader can get educated and come in and can say, hey, look, this was MK Ultra, this was this. But to his credit, aren't you guys amazed with how bold Robert Kennedy has been about talking about how his uncle and his dad were killed by the CIA? Fuck, that's courageous as shit.
He was in my Zoom group. I'm in a Zoom group, and he was one of the guys in it. So I'm in a doctor Zoom group, and we've invited so many wildly interesting characters. I don't know how they're doing it, but parliamentarians from Britain and Archbishop Vigano talking about all the pedophiles, and it's just.
So look, it may be a utopian dream, and this may never happen because there's just too many bad people in the world. But what I would dream is that all the pain that this fourth turning causes creates another Thomas Jefferson who's willing to stand up and say, I got it. Here's what the issue is. I'm going to communicate it to you. Follow me. We'll fix it.
So I was alluding earlier to this idea of elite revolution, and the best you can do is get half the seats at the table. And I do think that the idea that Bitcoiners are coming with to the table is we would like a fair, rules-based order enforced by code, enforced by machines. We want to take humans, imperfect humans, out of the loop, and we want to all abide by the same rule set. And we would like to, in theory, apply that to as many verticals as we possibly can. But we'll start with money, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and Bitcoin is the only thing in the world that we know to be absolutely true because it's based on math. It's a truth machine. And I think when 200 years from now, when our relatives look back, I really do think that there will be very much pre-Christ, post-Christ. I really do think it will be before Bitcoin and after Bitcoin. I think it's that big a revolution because we've solved a problem that's vexed mankind for thousands and thousands of years, which is not, having a ledger that's absolutely true and money that cannot be diluted. I think it's huge.
This is why we got to get our buddy Dave here to get some.
If I get Bitcoin, that's going to be the top. That's going to call a top. They will be. We finally got Collum. We finally got Collum.
You know what I'm going to do, Dave? You know what I'm going to do? I am going to gift you some Bitcoin so that you have skin in the game.
So are we upgrading
Because once
from
you
you
have skin
buying
in the
me
game,
lunch
you'll
last year?
start
Are
doing
we
the
upgrading
research.
from a lunch?
We're upgrading from the lunch or dinner that I reneged on. Yeah, I apologize for that. But
Well, you did
I was
buy
supposed
me
to have dinner
lunch
with Dave,
one
and then something
time,
else came
so
up.
yeah.
Well, I did buy you lunch, yeah. But look, I would say this, Dave. I sent you the book. I'm sure you haven't had time to read it yet, but please read the book because it really does lay this out. And I think, I don't know, if you other guys, have you read the book? I know.
How
Seth,
long
I
has
know
it been
you've read
out
it.
there?
I think
A
it's
couple days?
No. It's
That's
been
what
out
I
a month
call
or
a
two.
couple days.
I had advanced copies.
Yeah. You know, I think it's hard to read that book and not coming away thinking, God, I got to own some of this shit. I mean, it's an argument. It's a strong argument for it, you know.
Well, that valley of death that you were talking about earlier, Dave, I think that Bitcoin, I have described it in this way, that you can think of Bitcoin like an impenetrable fortress that you can go in and you can wait. And outside is a raging war where your enemies are nuking each other and stabbing each other and bombing each other. And you don't know how long the war is going to go on. You just know that if you go into this bunker and wait an indefinite period of time, you will come out unscathed. That's
So
kind
let me
of how
tell you
Bitcoin
another
works.
concern
It's
I've
like,
expressed to Cedric, and it's not a concern. It's more of one of the things I'm watching. So you guys are going, why would you wait? And there's several things that I'm waiting for, and Cedric knows what these are. And one is that I think you're going to do battle against the state capital S at some point, and that will be a fascinating battle. I will be watching that. By the way, HODL, we might have been on a joint podcast years ago. I'm trying to remember it. Second is Bitcoin has not yet been through a global liquidity crisis. They've had their own Bitcoin crises where it goes down 80% and all the newbies get flushed out and all the serious hodlers. Cedric keeps posting my quote about how something about some downturn is going to be gonna show all the people who don't know why they own Bitcoin what's going on. The next liquidity crisis where it's sell what you can, not what you want. It'll be fascinating to me to watch Bitcoin's behavior during that. And by the way, here just a foreshadowing of my concern. Bitcoin tracks the NASDAQ pretty tight sometimes. And so my portfolio for the last handful of years has been don't correlate with the equity markets. So if the days where equity and gold and things are doing this together, I get nervous. Like today, gold got crushed. Equities went nuts. I'd rather have it go the other way. But the lack of correlation is what I'm looking for. Because I think equities are going to end up in the basement, inflation adjusted.
Yeah, there could be a liquidity crisis. There might not be a big print in the short term, and Bitcoin could get hit the hardest in that situation. And Bitcoiners are not guaranteed the liquidity they're hoping for.
And here's the interesting thing. I'm waiting for the day, and it might never come, at which point I'll be a middle-class gold holder, a godler. But the day you guys stagger off the battlefield bloody and bruised and alive is sort of, that to me is when I say, you now have my attention completely.
Let me tell you what.
Now, don't tell me to buy just a little, because I don't think buying just a little. No,
you got to buy a lot.
Hold on, HODL. Before you go into your rant, Dave, with all due respect, don't mid-curve this. You're mid-curving it so hard right now.
Mid-curve is when you think the same way CNN thinks.
Oh, now these are fighting words. These are fighting words.
Don't over-intellectualize your critiques. You're too smart. You're too close to this thing. On the right side of the IQ curve, they're buying Bitcoin. Left side of the IQ curve, they're buying Bitcoin with a less sophisticated argument. You're caught in the middle.
I see. Well,
it's time, baby.
I will ponder your suggestions. Cedric's laughing because he knows that's about as that's as likely as getting a sound leader.
Larry can do the liquidity stuff, and I'll do the state fight. So a lot of people thought there was going to be, the state was going to bring the hammer down on us.
Do you think it's not coming? Do you think the state's not coming?
Well, here's what I think it's going to look like. I think there's an attempted co-option by the state that's already currently going on, and they're going to attempt to ghettoize us as a store of value, because if they can strip away our censorship resistance properties, our medium of exchange properties, and they own currency, well, then they sit at the table where they're the global cabal that says, they have all the money and they make all the laws, and they have all the guns, and they say what is and what is not money. Okay, we get completely excluded from that conversation. And the way they do that is if you have Bitcoin in self-custody, you are on an anarchic sovereign level, meaning the way that the government stores its Bitcoin is the same way you store your Bitcoin. So you have these incredibly powerful encryption tools. They want to strip that from you. The way they strip that from you is carrot stick approach, where they basically say, okay, we're going to slap you with these onerous reporting requirements that are impossible to comply and deal with. And we are going to dox you, and we are going to tax you up the ass, or debank you. Or here's the carrot. The carrot over here is you can put your money with BlackRock. You can run a buy, borrow, die strategy. You can get liquidity on your Bitcoin. You can buy that mansion, that Lamborghini that you want. There's no onerous reporting requirements. And then they have these nationalized honeypots like MicroStrategy's Bitcoin Hoard, the BlackRock Bitcoin Hoard, and at some point they take control of them. That's what the actual fight with the state looks like.
But has it really started? I know it started. It might have begun, but I think it's like Lexington and Concord.
That's true. It's early days. More like Fort Sumter.
I don't think it's. I mean, I think HODL's thinking that maybe they let these honeypots get set up knowing they could grab them later. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's why the ETFs got put through. But I don't know. I think the Trump administration is pretty friendly to Bitcoin. That fight.
They could say North Korea took the honeypot, and we think it's been hacked. They could say, here's your fiat to make you whole on your shares or your ETF. And then, a year or two later, we recovered the hacked Bitcoin.
Whenever they recover Bitcoin, it always bothers me because it's supposed to be autonomous.
But HODL's talking about, right, that hacked Bitcoin is Bitcoin you didn't hold. That was at an exchange or third party. So HODL's saying if you want a real seat at the table, you have to have self-custody Bitcoin in size, in portion. You should fully port like 10 or 25 or 50% of your wealth into Bitcoin and bunker down, like HODL was saying, Because, you guys brought up a point about, like, we haven't even talked about 9/11 here, and we have all this hope and transparency, but, like, we've gone through 9/11, we've got no transparency.
Although I just heard a U.S. senator say that Building 7 makes no sense just the other day. It's starting to sneak out.
Yeah, no, something maybe creeping out is starting, but that's a big one. And, if they would kill JFK and they would do 9/11 to us, like, I mean, where's the change of heart coming from in 2025, where all of a sudden the government's all the good guys? I'm not sure,
but the good guys. And HODL's right. I mean, I think the Blue administration, when they win in 4 years, which I think they probably will, because things will be so messy, they're gonna say, hey, these gold and Bitcoin guys are ruining our Keynesian fiat system. We need to tax them, grab it, this, that, and the other, and that's why self-custody is just so important, and that's why in that scenario, HODL and I aren't in.
Well, that's the problem. So it really requires, you need sort of another country, but you need your existence backed. I get in discussions with gold guys. They always talk about a gold-backed treasury. I said, it's not backed unless you can get gold for it. There's no backing unless you can take the gold. And but also, if a 50-year treasury that's gold back, I go, I'll promise you that. 50 years from now, hell, why not, right? But you have to be willing to move to another region of the world. So you are geographically back.
Well, I'm unwilling to do that. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to win.
I think if we lose America,
that's the risk, because they say it's against the law.
I don't think it's really an option.
It's against the law. You're done if you're not willing to move. And Larry sounds like he's willing to move.
Well, how to protect yourself during this fourth turning, and that doesn't mean leaving forever, but like Brandon wrote extensively on this.
I lost it.
You lost
and, you have to protect your wealth with Bitcoin, which is self-custody.
The government says it's illegal. It's like, I don't know where it is.
You do need a second passport.
They make you.
It's not bad to have a second passport.
I guarantee you they can. They'll come and they'll throw you in jail for a traffic violation. They can make you miserable.
Absolutely.
Dave, let's flip this on its head, though. The state has unlimited power to destroy any individual, no question. If they want to, they can and will. But they can't stop Bitcoin. And I think they're starting to realize that. So now they have to make a decision. And do they want to fight it, which will be expensive and they might lose. And if they lose, they look really bad and it builds the case for Bitcoin. Or they can play along and be early and win, which is cheap, and they get an upside to win. And so I think we're going to see something more like the internet debate in the 90s, where Congress is saying the internet's for pedophiles and drug dealers, this is bad, we got to censor this thing. And then ultimately cooler heads prevailed and they said, let's do no harm. What happens? We get big tech here, we get most of the innovation, and yeah, they can backdoor it all later. And so, yeah, it got corrupted over time, and we'll rebuild it on new technology, which is already starting to
See, I'm more
emerge and,
pessimistic about the
cycle
internet.
down.
I,
But I
I'm
think the
I'm
same,
worried that the digital world may have, by definition, ushered in authoritarianism. By definition.
I agree. That's where the cypherpunks came
Well,
from, which
even
birthed
as it
Bitcoin.
goes
They were
emergently
foreshadowing this.
authoritarianism, I don't even think it has to be a premeditated authoritarianism. So I'm worried that we cross some dotted line, we cross some event horizon, and
Encryption is the counterforce, though.
boy,
Yeah.
I'm
That's
a
the key
Luddite.
here.
This is getting
Encrypted money,
tricky.
encrypted communications. No, you
No,
don't have to learn encryption. You're
I'm
going to use it
defending
anyway.
against.
The
I'm
fight is no,
defending
Dave's
against.
Dave is right because we lost privacy. Privacy was a default for all of human history, and we lost
That's why I
it,
defend
boom,
cash,
in
for
the blink of
example.
an
And they're
eye.
going to get rid of that mother too.
Right, exactly. But Brandon is right, is that the answer to is encryption, which is a form of privacy on the internet, right? So like that is how encryption powered individuals are the saviors of the internet age, and you got to join us and become one. That's
So let's say they
I use an
try to
analogy.
outlaw it. You can't. You
But why would they? Let's back up. 5 years ago, they
Well, it
maybe would
depends
have.
on the
Today, they're
percentage of
not
the Bitcoin they
outlawing it.
own. If right now the banking system has 98% of the wealth, and they will give up
The
half of that.
Keynesians have a motivation to outlaw it, Brandon. They do.
But centralization will centralize, and right. So there's a centralizing force around Bitcoin in these institutions, and those will just create incredibly large honeypots that will eventually get hacked by good guys or bad guys one day. And once you hack Bitcoin and re-release it back into the wild, it's not KYC'd, it's not anything. It's just back in the wild.
Well, let's say
so
you
it doesn't have to stay centralized
This is a
forever.
question that's been bugging me.
And centralization is a
If you
bad
have
way
your own
to
code, you
secure
have your own
Bitcoin.
codes, and you get hit by a truck, what happens to those Bitcoin? They gone forever?
Yeah, no. So Bitcoin is programmable money, Dave. So like there are complicated. Yeah. So there are inheritance solutions right now. Like there's multi-signature key schemes. So like your wife
No.
could
But
have
let's
a
say
key
your
that
wife
backs up
doesn't.
your
So Cedric has just his keys. He gets hit by a truck. Has that now been erased for good? Is that Bitcoin erased for good?
If you have all of your Bitcoin wealth in your head,
Well,
which you
that
can
no one
store-
can
If
get
I was a
to.
schmuck.
You
can
buried
store
it
your
in a
head,
dump
then
somewhere.
yes, your wife is going to be destitute, and
But
you were
it's
a pretty
gone,
shit
right?
husband, and
It's
no
a
one's gonna sneak you to your
deflationary.
funeral.
It's a
That becomes-
deflationary
that's-
event,
That's
right?
dead
But
money.
that's a dumb way to.
It's
Now,
deflationary.
here's my
Yeah.
question.
Dumb way.
Less-
Let's say you're a big hodler and you're in the
Yeah.
way of the state. They have an incentive to cap your ass.
Yeah.
let's say Max and Stacy
Well,
are the
if
two
they-
richest people in the world. They could get Epstein pretty fast.
Well, listen. Unlike with gold, you kill the person, you can take their gold, right? Like with Bitcoin, you kill the person, the Bitcoin's gone. So what'd you get out of it?
Well, the
Yeah, you
state
can
gets
kill
a
him, but
higher
what'd you get out of it?
percentage of the Bitcoin.
That's true. That's true.
So
Yeah.
it's like
It's
Pfizer occasionally has layoffs, and they have pay scales from R1 to R9. The R9 guys are at great
Yeah.
risk of getting laid off. They all get laid off because they're the most expensive employees. So when they have layoffs, you watch the
Yeah.
R9s get clobbered. So if the state wants to take over Bitcoin, they got to start capping the guys who have it.
I think it's a lot easier to
Well,
co-opt them.
unless they own
You know what I mean?
half
I
of the
agree.
world's
Way
wealth. This
easier.
is my question.
It's a lot easier to co-opt it. They had that island set up for a
I know.
reason.
I know. I tried to get there. They just wouldn't let me
They
on.
don't have to kill
They
everybody
wouldn't
they don't
fly
like.
me.
They could just send you to an
What
island.
percentage of the
Yeah.
Bitcoin do the top 300 control?
Let's break that down quick. Hold on. There's an important nuance here. In that stat, which is data abuse, people are consolidating exchange wallets, which represent 1 million clients. Coinbase has the 10th biggest wallet, and it's with 500 or a million clients or whatever the number
To
is.
be fully honest, though, most of the wealth in Bitcoin is held by about 100,000 people.
What do the
So it's
top
not that many people.
300-ish private owners of Bitcoin, if you took the net worth of the top 300 Bitcoin owners and you said, let's calculate their net worth, you know that max.
They'd all be billionaires.
Well, what
by
percentage
definition.
of the Bitcoin would they be?
The Bitcoin
what
network,
percentage
is
would
it?
they be?
Yeah.
Hey Dave, go on, get
Okay.
on Google, and Google the Bitcoin rich
Okay,
list.
okay, that's what.
No,
The
that
Bitcoin
has the
top
Giddy-
100
that has the
Bitcoin
exchange
addresses
wallet.
and distribution.
That has the exchange wallets in it, though. So that's what
It
Brandon
does.
confusing.
It does, but it gives you a sense.
Yeah,
Are
I'm
you
doing
doing
it.
this?
Well, I ran a
Top 100
So there are four addresses that have between 100,000 and a million
million.
coins.
So that's
Right.
that's 100 billion. Yeah.
That's billions and billions. There are 89 addresses that have between 10,000 and
Okay.
100,000. There are 203 addresses that have between 1,000 and 10,000. There are 15,000 that have between 100 and 150. HODL has one of those.
What is your
Not
lowest
way
cost
less.
basis? Fess up, guys. What's your lowest cost basis?
For me, yeah, I say it on podcast. So for me, it was.
I walked from it at 10. I walked from him at 10. I fucked up on capital accounts in an interview. I said I walked from him at 10. Now here's why I don't lose sleep. Because it would have gone to 50, I would have sold. And then I would have taken the profits. I would have taken the profits and spent it on therapy for the rest of my life.
You'd been saying not to.
That's the problem.
How would you have known? The risk factor, it's so much more de-risked now, though. So when you look back at it, like
Right. So I was told, Chris Barnes and I were laughing about this, about buying gold in the 200s. I bought gold because it was my first purchases were in a closed-end fund that was way below NAV. I was buying gold for like $200 an ounce. Now, someone says to Chris, well, it was real easy because it was cheap. I go, it was cheap because there were 5 of us in the world who wanted it, right? So I would not have held it. Guaranteed I would not have held it.
When I bought Bitcoin, the experience was throwing your money down a dark hole and saying,
Okay,
goodbye.
well, I wouldn't have
was
done
the
that.
experience.
I bought Geron, the sheep stock, and it went up. My wife told me to buy it. She bought 10 shares. I go, it's $4 a share, Candace, right? This is stupid. So I bought some, and then it went up fourfold, and I sold it, and it was a good decision. But that's what I would have done. I would have said, take the money, get out of here. It was fun.
but you've never
Well, I've never
encountered
anything
scarce
like
before.
Bitcoin before.
They could always make and print more. Well, scarce. I mean, they can make more stock, right? Like the CEO can decide to issue more stock, dilute you. Gold.
I'm
they
not
could
worried about
find
them
more
finding more
gold,
gold. I
in
feel
a
pretty
particular
secure on
year.
the gold limitation.
No, but I'm just saying at the rate of issuance of gold. I'm just saying Bitcoin's the first thing where no one can change the issuance schedule. Your share is your share between you and the network. It's not real estate where you have to outcompete someone else from a strategic or municipal or some sort of geographical manner. It's just you in the system.
I bought
and we've
American
never had anything
Antiques
like
in the
that
80s.
before.
They're not
So-
making them anymore either. And
There you go.
They're not buying them anymore either.
That's like buying a Duesenberg. Everyone who wanted one is dead.
Hey, if you got
No,
Thomas
but
Wolfe
it
Furniture, I'll take
shows
it
you.
off
And
your
for
hands.
example, the McMansions
Well,
are
the
going to be a
Bitcoiners will
problem
buy
too
it.
because A, the younger generation doesn't have the money, and B, they don't want them. So
Yep.
They're pieces of shit.
So
They're pieces of shit.
rare
That's-
doesn't
Right.
rare and limited doesn't set the price.
The boomers think everybody wants all their shit, and they think every house
I'm
is
not
a 10
arguing
when it's a
against
mid.
Bitcoin. I'm just pointing out that because it's limited doesn't mean there's only so many Beanie Babies in the world too. But I guarantee you,
Let me give you a different, younger person's interpretation of it. Is like the biggest wealth transfer in the world is going to happen between boomers and millennials. And my millennial peers who missed out on Bitcoin are going to get inherited wealth from their parents, and then they're going to look at me and say, "For that fucking guy, I deserve to have what he has."
let me
And then they're gonna
counter
buy
that
Bitcoin,
wealth
you know.
transfer argument. I think the wealth has to get repriced in the transfer. I think if you go through the logistics, say, okay, you're going to inherit my house. What do you have to do? You have to sell the house, right? I
That's
know.
the
I know.
X that
I'm just
Howard was
saying
talking about
these
in the
people who
beginning,
think
though.
the wealth will be transferred without it changing price, I think are making a mistake. I think that
That's true.
Well, your wealth gets repriced every time someone
But
sells
for example,
something similar to yours at a
all of
lower
our
price, and now
McMansions are
you're
not going to
comped
transfer
lower.
at the current market price, is my point.
Right.
But you just need one McMansion to sell
I
at
know.
50% off for
I
all of
know.
you who own a
I know.
McMansion to lose your wealth
So,
in
th-
McMansions.
That's
You
the
so
point.
I
That's
don't
the
think
point.
the wealth
don't
will
need
transfer. I
volume.
think
You
the
don't
wealth will
need-
get
it's at the
destroyed
fringe.
as it gets transferred. I think it'll get repriced. It'll
Right,
get
but some
repriced.
people on that
Yes,
curve
yes.
will exit.
Certainly
Yeah.
much
Some
of
people
it.
on that curve
That's
will
right,
exit
that's right,
as that's
that's right.
happening.
Certainly
Well,
much
And
of
get
the
repriced into Bitcoin.
Yeah, Dave. Certainly much of the real wealth is not in, boomer
Or
Sunbelt
Nvidia
McMansion
or
homes with faux
Microsoft
turrets.
or Apple or.
It's in Apple.
Well,
It's
I don't
in
think it is. I
Microsoft,
think they're
it's in
way the fuck
Google.
overpriced. Way overpriced.
Well, they
I
are
think the key-
they are
Agreed,
overpriced,
agreed.
but there's nothing to say that the Ponzi is imminently going to blow
Not
up. I
imminently,
mean, it'll blow
but
up at some point, but
Eventually.
yeah.
But by
Eventually, yes.
design, none of
Eventually,
those
yes.
instruments can accrue tremendous wealth. No one can port. Humanity can't port their entire
I know.
wealth into
I
NVIDIA.
totally agree.
NVIDIA would become right. So by design, these things can
I
only
would say
get
they've
so
reached
big
that point.
Yeah.
to the extent that they can't get big, like in terms of gold or currency or real estate as a whole, because they'll topple just by design, or they'll have competitors by design.
Right.
The
right.
more
Well,
valuable they get.
Well, let me bring data to the inheritance problem, because I was complaining to my dad, a boomer. I was like, dude, you had it on easy street, economic tailwinds your whole life. It's hard now. He complains, whatever. Then he says, well, then why are half my friends
They
still
fucked
working in
up.
their mid 60s? What's going on?
They were idiots.
And then I look at the math. They did fuck up, but you look at the math, and the average boomer family has $1.2 million net
No, that's
worth, but
no,
the
no, that's not the
median
average.
is
I don't think that's the average.
200,000.
I think you're way too high on that. About
Well, he's
7
saying-
years ago. No, I
Includes their
got
home.
this
He's
saying
confirmed
the
by
average
Stephen
is
Roach.
being
I mean,
buoyed by the
about
top 1%.
7 years ago, I think the 5 percentile guy was worth 1.1. 1.1. Now, there's been an
It's probably true in the population. Boomers have more than that, but the median is 200,000. That's the key point I'm trying to add. Let's not even fight about the average. Median 50 percentile guy is 200K. That's what they're going to spend to die. They're going to spend it in the medical. So half the people have zero inheritance. The next 25% maybe have here's a down payment on a house inheritance. The top 25th percentile, they'll have something.
So 5 percentile guy,
And so
this is a good story.
not
I
that
was trying to
much.
figure out how to protect myself against in '06 against the banking collapse. 5 percentile guy had a $156,000 salary. 5 percentile guy was also a boomer because you don't start in your 20s at the 5th percentile, and had 1.1 million. Roach corrected me and said, yeah, but that's total worth. It's about 700,000 of investment worth. And so I said, but I'm going with the total. And if you think you can liquidate it, conventional portfolio theory says you can take 3 conservatively, 4 liberally %, which means the guy who's 5 percentile can take out about $48,000 a year. That guy can't live on $48,000 a year. The American dream is broken.
That's why you see boomer retirement homes popping up in the Sun Belt, where they put down trailers shoulder to shoulder and they play pickleball and
Tiny
they water
home.
polo.
Well, so here's
Hey,
where
tiny
I
home.
stand.
For boomers.
I
Yeah,
am
they're
in a
massive.
position where if I don't fuck up, I will retire comfortably for the rest of my life. And knowing my own personal lifestyle, I'll be happy and I'll leave money for my kids. If I fuck up, heaven only knows. That's why I tend to be pretty conservative at this point, and why I'm pushing back into Bitcoin, not because I think you guys are stupid. I think you're nuts. No, I'm just kidding. You have to be a little psychotic to play this game, actually. But only because for me the risk reward ratio has flipped pretty good, and now I never make a big decision, which I say here's the filter. I send every big decision through it, every big decision done in my whole life. If this works out very badly, will I forgive myself? And if the answer is no, I don't do it.
Right, but so here's what we would say, Dave. Having zero is wrong. take 5% of your net worth and put it in Bitcoin. If you lose 5%
It's a
of your
bad
net
day.
worth,
No, that's just
secure
yesterday.
retirement.
You can
That's
forgive yourself,
yesterday.
though.
Exactly. You're
Forgive
going
yourself.
to be able to forgive yourself. And if that 5% does what we know it's going to do, which is it goes up 10x and then it gogoes up 10x again, it's going to basically change your kids' lives.
I'm hoping I can.
And so,
I'm hoping I
the
can
sharp-
change my kids' lives already. But I understand the point.
Yeah.
but
The
I mean,
sharp
yeah,
rate
of course you can. But I'm just saying beyond that, right?
Yeah. So just a little bit of Bitcoin added to a portfolio makes a big difference. Makes a big impact.
Yeah.
You're not
5%.
You're not the. You're not.
And you won't
the
have to
first
fight as hard
hodlers
to pass it on.
To sell this.
No,
to
we
me.
know. We know.
I'll give you each a second to round out.
Okay.
I just want to read from Brandon's, piece though, how to protect yourself during this fourth turning. So, obviously protect your wealth with Bitcoin self-custody, minimize your debt, don't get wiped out by volatility, live below your means, multiple sources of income, acquire a second passport, don't be cancelable, don't invest in politics du jour, culture is not your friend, opt out, be self-reliant, grow food, defend yourself, have access to energy, become more technical, learn digital privacy, how to code and Bitcoin, become super literate, avoid junk food content, read books and write essays, find community, build your citadel, and stay vigilant. I'll pass it to you. Maybe we'll start with Brandon.
I think this was a lot of pessimism, I think, warranted under the context, but I'm actually extremely optimistic when I look out in the world. I don't think we should spend so much time on the internet because it messes with us, and we're not built. Our biological machine is not supposed to know who's getting bombed on the other side of the world in rapid succession every day. So it messes with us. I think this is partially a Bitcoin ethos, but when I have enough Bitcoin where I'm not concerned about the future, I can start to focus on what actually affects my life with confidence, which is my local environment, my friends, my family, how I choose to spend my time. And through that lens, I went from a crazy COVID, the world's burning person to a, wait a minute, worst case scenario, everyone I care about is going to be fine. We're ahead of the curve. We have the defensive posture with Bitcoin to defend ourselves against worst case scenario. And now all of a sudden, the world looks great. And if I look at our country's standpoint, yeah, we're going to have to redo this thing, but we've been redoing this thing over and over and over for a long time. And America's positioned as well as anyone around the world. We have the demographics, we have food, we have energy, we have the manufacturing base on our hemisphere. We can pull this thing off. And if it's hard for a while, that's okay. Just position yourself, plan for that, and hope for the best.
Larry?
I couldn't have said it any better. I mean, I completely agree. I'm very optimistic about where we will be on the other side of this. I do think it's going to be bumpy, and people should prepare for that. But the best way to get prepared is to understand what Bitcoin really is and to own a lot of it. I mean, just to give you a context, Dave, probably 75% of my net worth is in Bitcoin, and I'm 67 years old. So what's not in Bitcoin is in houses and gold and silver. And so, I'm extremely comfortable that me and mine will be fine. But I wrote the book because I wanted to try and influence as many people as possible to help them. And then I also wanted to try and create as big a base as possible so that when things do get rougher, people will go to the voting booth and they'll vote for a Michael Saylor or a Robert Kennedy or a Sound Money, somebody who takes us back to the Constitution and takes us back to sound money, because I think those are the two things we've lost. We've lost the ideal of America, which was a fair system. It's no longer a fair system because the money changers have figured out how to screw us all. And we've lost the sound money because we went off the gold standard in '71. So, and it's pretty simple. We fix those things and things are going to be great. And that's the good news. The bad news is we haven't fixed them yet. So I did my part, which was writing the book, because I thought the book was a good, I hope the book moves the needle in that direction. That's why I wrote it. So, and I'm very optimistic too. I mean, that's the one thing, Dave, once you get into this and you really see it and you start to meet everybody in it, you realize it's all going to work out. It's going to be pretty good. But, you gotta understand what Bitcoin is.
Well, I've read a few books on it. I mean,
I know you have. I know you understand.
Well, here's one more to read. I think we need Larry for president.
Your book aside,
I think Larry's president.
I actually thought one of
Dave, I'll let you go.
Actually, Lynn Alden actually, I thought made some of the most interesting arguments. Yeah, that was a
Fabulous
fabulous
book.
book. And,
Good
and
book.
she's
Yeah.
so
Well,
she's
the
so
issue there is just
yeah.
smart. Yeah, the issue
Yeah, so
there
this
is
is like
just
if
that
Lynn Alden
the average citizen's not going to read
Yeah.
that
and
book.
say
I'm
she
guessing
had
her
a baby
IQ
with a
is in the
book.
triple
There's
digits.
a little bit.
Okay, here's my first. I'm going to do triple X, 3X leverage short on Bitcoin, see how that works.
We encourage you to do so. We
Um,
encourage you to do so.
I do think
Thank you for your sacrifice.
jump right off the cliff. I do think that people should take from this message, even if they don't take Bitcoin away from it, they got to take defense away from it. And I think one could call gold Bitcoin light if you want. You got to do something to protect against. I have the markets at 200% over historical average valuation, which means either we're going to sit up here in the stratosphere and your return is you're priced to get about a 2% return in perpetuity, or we're going to correct. And I think it's not going to be a crash. I don't believe they fix anything. I think we're going to, if you do the math, regression to the mean, not through it. If we grind our way through growth in GDP, assuming everything goes normal, it'll take 40 years to take out the overvaluation. You can't inflate away overvaluation. It's an interesting math no one ever mentions. The numerator and the denominator both are inflation sensitive. So you're 200% over fair value. Inflation will not eradicate that overvaluation. It'll just make it painful, more painful. I'm going to take a prepper stance. I think if you own a house, you have the space and you have the resources. There's no excuse not to have rice and beans and canned food in the basement and things like that, because you never know when you're going to get some EMP, when you're going to get some ice storm where a month later they sell them fix shit because they suck now, and you need calories. You need calories. You don't need nutrition. You don't need something that'll make Bobby Kennedy proud. You just need calories in case. And a couple hundred pounds of rice is what, $50? Well, it's probably now about $200. But and you got to hedge inflation one way or the other. Whether you guys are nuts or not, I don't think you're nuts. One way or the other, you got to get something that's going to track inflation. And it better not be something that's just sentiment based. And so. And with that, you'll probably get kicked off YouTube, Cedric, for something.
Probably. I'm waiting. It'll make my life easier.
We are nuts.
Yeah, that
but
could
we're
be.
also right.
That's sometimes true. Not I was going to say often, but not often, but sometimes.
Yeah, I would say I agree a lot with everything that's been said. I agree with Dave. I think the appropriate thing here is a barbell strategy where you have, on the one hand, whiskey, ammo, prescription pills, rice, beans, maybe a little bit of gold. I don't do the gold thing because fuck that. But
wait, I can't do that with
hand,
Bitcoin. Come on, guys, this isn't fair.
100% Bitcoin. Well, I believe gold's going to be demonetized within my lifetime, right? Like, maybe not within your lifetime, but within my lifetime, it's going the way of the dodo. So yeah, to me. I think, you got to barbell it out, where you got a call option over here for a glorious future where we actually do win, and we have encryption powered individuals running society, and then over here you got I'm fending off zombies with an AR-15, and you got to plan for both outcomes. Maybe you got to live through the bad times to get to the good times, but yeah. You should have everything in Bitcoin. Zero gold.
Oh,
sorry,
God.
I gotta repeat that.
God,
gold.
I'm sending my zombie army after you.
One point: if the world goes to shit, Bitcoin rises. If the world doesn't go to shit, Bitcoin rises.
Bitcoin is fourth turning money. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Bitcoin Matrix. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below with any questions or thoughts you may have. We'd love to hear from you. You can support the show by checking out our sponsors and affiliate links in the description. It helps keep bringing you great content while connecting you with awesome products that I believe in. Share this episodes with your friends, family, or anyone curious about Bitcoin. And let's keep growing this community together. Stay curious, keep stacking, and I'll catch you in the next one.